Good morning. I'd like to welcome everybody to the House Education meeting this morning. Before we actually get into our agenda today, I would like to take a moment for Chairman's privilege. It was 6 years ago today, on January 23rd, 2018, I was actually in this committee room. We were finishing up a meeting of the House Education Committee when Chairman Bam Kearney informed us there had been a shooting at Marshall County High School. That was 6 years ago today. There were 2 students who lost their lives that tragic morning and 18 others who were injured. And if you would take a moment and join with me, let's have a moment of silence and remember those families who still mourn and grieve their losses. Thank you. From that tragic morning came a lot of work, and in 2019 we passed Senate Bill 1, the School Safety and Resiliency Act, which has been model legislation for other states around the country, and we continue to work on ways to keep our schools safe for our students and everyone involved in the schools. We do have Representative Lewis has an introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have with us from Davis County today, Ms. Jana Bryan, who's a math specialist. So make her feel welcome. Thank you.
Representative Timony has an introduction.
Thank you, Chairman. I have a special guest with me today, Kelly Lindsay from Carter G. She's a math teacher there, and if we could make her feel welcome. Thank you.
Very good. Any other members have any introductions at this time? I would ask guests if you would like to speak this morning. There is a sign-up sheet in the back. Please sign up that sheet. Additional testimony will be at the chair's discretion based on time constraints and information already presented. I want to remind everyone that no signs are permitted in the committee rooms. Mariah, please call the roll.
Representative Ballman.
Present.
Representative Bojanowski.
Here.
Representative Brown. Representative Callaway.
Present.
Representative Josh Callaway.
Present.
Representative Decker. Representative Doan.
Present.
Representative Jackson.
Present.
Representative Lewis.
Here.
Representative Massaroni.
Present.
Representative McCool. Representative Rayburn.
Here.
Representative Rawlings.
Here.
Representative Raymond. Representative Riley.
Here.
Representative Timony.
Here.
Representative Wilner.
Here.
Vice Chair Baker.
Here.
Vice Chair Truitt. Chair Tipton.
Here. Our first item on the agenda today is House Bill 96. Representative Daniel Pfister, if you'll come forward. I will remind everyone the chair will administer the oath to anyone who testifies today. So Representative Pfister, please identify yourself for the record, and then I will administer the oath, and then you can begin your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. State Representative Dan Pfister, representing the 56th District.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do, sir.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Thank you. I'm here to present House Bill 96 this morning. You all may recognize this from the 22 session when it was House Bill 201, passed the committee and passed the House, and then died over in the Senate because of lack of time. We got it in at the end of the session. It's a very simple bill. What it does is it allows for a moment of silence at the beginning of each school day. The administration will set up a policy to run this. They will send a letter home to the parent or guardian to instruct the child in what to do with their moment of silence. That moment of silence is to be at least a minute and no more than 2 minutes. And that's basically the entire bill right there.
Motion on the bill.
Representative Pfister, do you have any research that you could share with us that shows support in learning of students who have a mandatory moment of silence?
Not on that issue, no, I don't.
May I comment on the bill, please? To me, this reads as a bill that requires prayer during the school day. And you may say it doesn't, but that's how it reads. That's how it seems to me. Students can already pray at any time during the school day, which I'm sure you're very well aware. They can pray at the flagpole. They can pray at breakfast. They can pray at wellness. They have a right to pray at any time during the day. But what this bill creates is a time specifically, I believe, intended to be for prayer, which is a little edgy because we have what's called the Establishment Clause, which has a very fine line when it comes to teacher-directed activities that could be conferred as prayer. So, I mean, as a teacher, I feel the sense of there's just one more thing being piled on us, and I see where your intent is, but from my perspective, I feel like your intent is to have prayer in school. Thank you.
Representative, I understand your concern, and I share that concern as well on some issues, but I think on this particular one, it is parent-driven. The child is just allowed a time to focus on whatever's important to them, whether it be the dog ate my homework speech or whatever they want to work on, but it just allows them that time to settle and get ready for the day.
Representative Raymond.
Thank you. Representative, how much time have you spent in K through 12 public schools in the last year?
I've done principal for a day, I think, at three different schools this year.
I wonder if, based on that experience, you think it might be unreasonable for pupils to remain seated and silent and make no distracting display.
I don't think so. I mean, how do you teach a child that you can't get to sit still anyway? I mean,
May I comment on the bill, please?
Go ahead.
We keep saying we want parents to make decisions for their children and not the schools. And here we're asking the school to take over something that's the parents' responsibility. And I think the children have plenty of time to meditate on their 45-minute bus ride. Thank you.
well, I would have to disagree with that because there is a clause in there where the parent is required or asked to instruct a child. The administration of the school does not instruct a child to do anything in this other than to sit quietly for a moment.
A question from Representative Wilner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Pfister, I was just curious about taking away the teacher's discretion where they may, provide for a minute or two of silent reflection to a requirement that they absolutely have to do it. And could you talk about that from the perspective of teacher discretion?
I'm not sure what you're looking for there. Most schools are doing this anyway, so I understand. It would just allow all the students to have the same opportunity in the mornings.
I have a question from Representative Timoney.
Thank you, Chairman. Representative, thank you for bringing this. To go in a different direction. My son attends Lafayette High School, and they do a moment of mindfulness at the start of every school day. And I think it's amazing. Giving the kids an opportunity to decompress before the school day begins. I think there's a lot of research that shows about being mentally prepared for the start of the school day. The school does a really good job of helping kids kind of understand what mindfulness is. And I think that where we are in 2024 with technology and this unreal pressure from social media for our kids to be in, they need an intentional time just to catch their breath. So I'm supportive of this. Thank you for bringing it forward.
Thank you, sir.
Seeing no more questions and having a proper motion and second on the bill, Mariah, call the roll.
Representative Baker,
Yes.
Representative Ballman,
Yes.
Representative Bojanowski,
No.
Representative Brown, Representative Emily Callaway,
Yes.
Representative Josh Callaway,
Yes.
Representative Decker, Representative Doan,
Yes.
Representative Jackson,
Yes, ma'am.
Representative Lewis,
Yes.
Representative Massaroni,
Yes.
Representative McCool, Representative Rayburn,
Yes.
Representative Rawlings,
Yes.
Representative Raymond,
No on this unnecessary Christian posturing.
Representative Riley,
Yes.
Representative Timoney,
Yes.
Representative Truitt,
Yes.
Representative Wilner,
No.
Chair Tipton.
Chair votes aye. With 14 yes votes and 3 no votes, House Bill 96 passes with favorable expression. That same should pass on the House floor. Thank you, Representative Pfister.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, committee members.
I will be vacating the chair for the next 3 bills. Just remind everybody, there was one change to the agenda last night. House Bill 228 will be for discussion only today. But we have 1 bill to consider and 2 bills for discussion only. And I will turn the chair over to Vice Chair Truitt.
Welcome. At this time, I'm going to go ahead and ask you to identify yourself, just for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. James Tipton, State Representative, House District 53. Which bill we're going to start on, Mr. Chair?
275.
Okay,
Let's do 275.
I have a guest. If my guest will come forward and identify herself as well.
Okay, thank you.
Mike's on, just identify.
We'll let you go ahead and identify yourself, please.
Katomi Yokakura.
Welcome. At this time, I want to ask you to raise your right hand. I'm going to swear you in. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
There is a subcommittee or a committee substitute in members' packets. Representative Tipton, if you don't care, could you explain the bill
Sure.
and that proposed House substitute?
I will quickly explain. The substitute is just one minor change. It was a clarification that was asked by the Cabinet for Health and Family Services. If you look on page 1 of the bill, in the original language under section, it says section 2, 1A. It references KRS 620.030. On page 10 of the bill, on line 20, that reference is also added to that section. For your information, KRS 620.030 is the duty to report dependency, neglect, abuse, human trafficking, or female genital mutilation. And the Cabinet just asked that we clarify that provision in there as well. So that is all that the committee sub does.
Motion on the sub.
All those in favor, say aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, members of the committee. This legislation should look familiar. Last year, I presented this bill as House Bill 288. It passed out of this committee and passed on the floor of the House 97-0. Did get through the Senate Education Committee. They had some questions. We just didn't get those resolved in a timely manner before the end of session, so we're back this time. Why are we presenting House Bill 275 today? If you watch the news on any given day, unfortunately, you will see where an unfortunate situation has happened in a school system involving a teacher or someone in authority with one of the students. This is a sad reality, and the intent of House Bill 275 is to try to prevent this from happening. Let me go over a few of the main provisions. In Section 1 specifically states that school cannot enter into a non-disclosure agreement. Not only public schools, over in the bill where it talks about the certified non-public schools, that is also added to that section of the language. Section 2 defines abusive conduct, means conduct involving a minor or student, involving sexual misconduct and conduct subject to mandatory reporting procedures. A lot of what this legislation does is it deals with the application process when someone applies for a position with a school system. It requires that applicant to disclose any other public or non-public school that they have taught in. It requires the school system to reach out to those other school districts for references to ask if there have been any specific issues of this nature. It also requires those past school districts to provide the information. It gives them immunity on that. So that's part of it. We're trying to screen out. Let me share a situation, a real life situation for someone I know, and this was before I came into service in the General Assembly. I know a family who had a young teenage daughter. I believe she was a junior or senior in high school. A teacher was making unwanted sexual advances toward this young lady. The parents found out. They started investigating. They discovered that this teacher had actually been employed in another school district not far away, and the same situation had happened. So what happened is that teacher just resigned their position. No investigation was ever completed. There was no record of this incident anywhere for this this new school district to know this had happened. So that's kind of the premise for this application process, and part of why I felt compelled to bring this legislation forward. And then in 2022, there was a series of articles by the Lexington Herald-Leader that highlighted just how significant this issue is. And since that time, like I say, I continue to see these issues. So that's just a little background into the allegation part of it, that process. There's also, in subsection 2 of that section 2, it details the process that will take place when the allegation is made. When the student, that young person, makes an allegation of somebody in the school system, they are required to report that to the principal. The principal is required to document that allegation and submit that reported allegation to the superintendent. The superintendent is required to conduct an investigation, and they are required to complete that investigation, whether that teacher or whether that employee stays employed by the school district or not. That way, there is a completion to that. It will come to completion one way or another. So if there is truth to the allegation, it would stay in that permanent record. Obviously, there are other, in KRS 161, there are some reporting guides. The superintendent's required to report this type of situation to EPSB for them to review. But this is on the local level. Section 4 of the bill also addresses certified non-public schools. It has the non-disclosure agreement and puts some requirements on them. Section 4 of the bill will require KDE to develop a training that would be given to all employees in the 25-26 school year, or any new employee when they become employed, and they would be required to repeat that training once every 5 years. Okay, I appreciate that, but I'd like at this time for my guest to share her statement.
My name's Katomi Okakura, and I'm a student at the University of Kentucky and a graduate of Kentucky K-12 schools, where I learned from some of the most amazing teachers. I'm here today to voice my support for House Bill 275, not only as a student, but as a survivor of grooming and sexual abuse carried out by my high school teacher. I was a teenager when the teacher created a private group chat with me and my friend on Remind, a texting platform utilized by my high school to update classes on assignments and important information. He worked to gain my trust, talking with me behind the closed doors of his office and offering me homemade food when my grandfather passed away. After gaining my trust, he would emotionally manipulate me and the other students he favored, publicly shunning and alienating anyone who did something to upset him. Other adults and school staff observed his flirtatious teasing and conversations that occurred behind closed doors, unaware of the grooming occurring before their eyes and reinforcing my belief that what was going on was normal. Unfortunately, the texts and teasing escalated when he began tutoring me. During these tutoring sessions, he gave massages, exposed himself, digitally penetrated me, and manipulated my hands for his own pleasure. An anonymous adult eventually raised concerns to the principal of the school. However, to my knowledge, the exploration into these concerns ceased after the principal questioned the teacher and contacted my parents, who knew of the tutoring sessions but were unaware of what really happened during them. It wasn't until talking with my college friends that I began to fully understand the gravity of my experience and the betrayal of an individual I trusted, my community trusted. Now, I'm sitting before you, months away from my graduation from UK. But my experience with educator sexual misconduct almost stole this from me. When I first began to grasp the reality of my high school experiences, I did not know if I would be here to walk across that stage. In those months, I would spend days without a minute of sleep, and energy drinks and coffee became my new water as I fought to stay awake, knowing that every time I closed my eyes, I would be brought back to the back seat of a car with the teacher who had just taken my clothes off. In the time between the anonymous adult's concerns and my report to the Kentucky State Police, the teacher confessed his love to a recent graduate and continued texting high school students individually. The teacher who abused me did not stop after his actions were first questioned. And I wish I could tell you that my experience is unique. But since I last sat here before the Education Committee less than a year ago, I've had friends, community members, teachers, and strangers tell me their story or a story that happened in their community. I was not the first person to experience educator sexual misconduct in Kentucky, and I'm not the last. This bill is important because it can prevent these teachers from being able to continue abusing students. And I want to thank you for letting me speak today, and I hope you vote in favor of this bill to show our students, our kids, that as a state, we care about protecting them from sexual misconduct in their schools.
Katomi, thank you for coming forward and sharing your story. I know it was not easy. Mr. Chair, would be glad to entertain any questions from the committee.
Well, first off, I want to echo what you said. Thank you for your testimony and the courage that you have to come and speak with us today. It's appreciated. We do have a couple questions. First question is from Mr. Doan, Representative Doan, sorry.
Thank you for coming and testifying today. It's very courageous of you. Chairman, I've got a question on the non-disclosure agreements. I could see the benefit of those for the victims. And so does anything in this bill, when those disclosures are made to other school districts, does it protect, redact the names of victims or of children that may be involved in that?
I'm not aware if there's anything specific in this legislation. I do know that there are FERPA laws in place, and I know from my conversations, like with EPSB, with superintendents, they're not allowed to discuss any type of information when these allegations are made, investigations are made. Those are all kept confidential.
Thank you.
Okay, next we've got Representative Bojanowski.
Just a comment, please.
Yes.
I just want to thank you for being so brave. I know this was not an easy thing to do, to share your story. And as a teacher, I am horrified that someone violated your trust in this manner. And I, for one, will try to do everything I can to keep this from happening to another child. Thank you.
Representative Wilner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Katomi, I want to echo what my colleague said. It was hard to listen to your story. I can't imagine how hard it was to tell it. And like you, I've heard similar stories from too many other students, and we need to stop this. But I do have a question, and it's related to the question actually that Representative Doan asked, and this was sent to me directly from a student. And so I wanted to lift up this student's voice by just, I guess, getting a little more reassurance around the NDAs. So Chair Tipton, the question from the student is, if we're no longer allowing NDAs around misconduct with minors, could this maybe violate the minor's right to privacy, especially if the bill would prevent the family of minors from entering into NDAs for the sake of protecting their child? So could you just speak to that
Sure.
again? Thank you.
Representative Wilner, the intent of this language, and this was language that I worked on last year with then Commissioner Glass and many others to develop. The intent of this language is to prevent a non-disclosure agreement between a school district and a teacher or employee as part of some type of settlement, them leaving, so this could be kept private because we want this information to be out there. It is certainly not the intent to allow private information of a minor child to become public. Like I said with Representative Doan, I know we have FERPA laws. I know there are EPSB, they keep all this confidential. What I will do is I will talk to our bill drafters and we'll discuss this, possibly talk to some people and see if maybe this is something we may need to just adjust the language to clarify that it would not apply to the situation of the minor or the victim.
Thank you. That's very helpful. I appreciate it.
Right.
That does conclude the questions. I guess we'll ask for a motion on the bill.
Second.
Go ahead. All right. With already having a motion and a second, Mariah, please call the roll.
Representative Baker? Representative Ballman?
Yes.
Representative Bojanowski?
Yes.
Representative Brown? Representative Emily Callaway?
Yes, with a comment, please.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Chairman Tipton, I want to thank you for your time and efforts on this, and for your testimony as well. And I do admire your bravery, and I too have stories. And so for you to be able to come and articulate it, I applaud you and I appreciate you.
Representative Josh Callaway?
Yes.
Representative Decker?
Yes.
Representative Doan?
Yes.
Representative Jackson?
Yes, ma'am.
Representative Lewis?
Yes.
Representative Massaroni?
Yes.
Representative McCool? Representative Rayburn?
Yes.
Representative Rawlings?
Yes.
Representative Raymond?
Yes.
Representative Riley?
Briefly explain my vote.
Yes.
I'm a yes. Sexual grooming and sexual abuse of our young people has increased substantially in our society. We have become a society obsessed with sex. And in many cases, this has led to abuse and grooming of our young people in many aspects of societies, in many areas of society, unfortunately also including schools, but in many groups outside of schools. I do want the public to understand that people that are involved in this in schools need to be severely punished. It is as morally wrong as anything can be to abuse young people. But I also want them to realize that the overwhelming number of teachers, the vast majority of teachers, are good people who do good things every day. Thank you.
Representative Timoney?
Briefly explain my yes vote.
Sure.
Chairman, thank you for bringing this again. Obviously, this is something that's critical, and I can't echo Representative Riley's statements more over than that. You know, my philosophy as a teacher and a coach is that as soon as a student came on my roll or was on one of my sports teams, they became one of my children, and it was my responsibility to protect them from things like this. And we're talking about 99.9% of teachers would give their life for their children. And that's why this bill is really, really important. I know this is a really important first step. I would hope that our surrounding states would add some type of reciprocity with this type of process, because my experience with this particular issue is that we've had people come in from out, and that makes it incredibly difficult for us to be able to follow, kind of connect the dots between this behavior. So thank you for bringing this forward, and thank you for your testimony today.
Representative Truitt,
Yes.
Representative Wilner,
Yes.
Chair Tipton.
Chair votes yes. I can make a brief comment. Representative Timoney, House Bill 319 that we passed last session, which had the interstate teacher compact in that, had reciprocity on disclosure of these type of situations. So that part is in there, but we definitely do to vote more. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
House Bill 275 passes with the expression of opinion that the same should pass with the committee substitute attached thereto. Thank you all. Okay, we're going to start now with House Bill 228. This will be for discussion only. We will not be taking any votes on this today. So, Chair Tipton, call up any witnesses that you have.
Okay. Well, I believe I'm on my own today, Mr. Chair, but that's all right. It's not the first time.
All right, sounds good. Go carry on.
You know, people have asked me why I have brought this legislation forward. Many of you know that I've worked very closely in the post-secondary world the last 6-7 years in my role as former chair of the Budget Review Subcommittee for Post-Secondary Education. Obviously, I've served on this committee. I've listened in on a lot of conversations, talked to a lot of people. That also includes my children, who have recently graduated with bachelor's and master's degrees. And I have detected that most of their experiences have been very positive, just like we shared with the last bill. But there are a few instances where they have had professors that were very difficult, that really, honestly, were not doing the job they need to do. They did not do my children or the other students justice in the classes that they had. What House Bill 228 is about trying to bring some conformity to the process of our public institutions as it goes to reviewing. The big word that everybody wants to talk about is tenure. Although the bill does not mention the word tenure, it does impact tenure. And what is tenure? I know it's a very difficult process for faculty members to get. Sometimes it takes several years, but tenure is not a job for life. Currently, there are provisions in statute that would allow someone, even with tenure, to be removed by a university. What this House Bill 228 does, I think it brings some clarity. It does provide redefine and clarify what the term with cause is. Just a little bit about the bill. The bill is divided in 3 sections. The reason for that is Section 1 of the bill is in direct reference to the University of Kentucky. Section 2 of the bill is in reference to our comprehensive universities in our Kentucky Community and Technical College system. And Section 3 of the bill refers to the University of Louisville. That's why we have the language in every situation, because those institutions are mentioned different in different places in statute. I think one of the things if you look, it also impacts the responsibility of a president of a university as well. Right now, the Board of Trustees in all these institutions has the power to hire, to remove the president, also faculty. This legislation would allow an institution to transfer that power to the president of the institution if the board so chose to do that. And I think the language that maybe has caused some concern, and it's mentioned several places throughout, but just for reference on page 1, on line 7 or 8, you can see the other situations it refers to. It adds the language, or failure to meet college or university performance and productivity requirements as determined in accordance with subsection 2 of this section. If you go down to subsection 2, It mentions that a performance and productivity of all faculty members shall be evaluated at least once every 4 years using a process approved by the board. This does not mean that a university could not do a review more often than every 4 years, but every institution, at least every 4 years, would do this process. It states that failure to meet performance and productivity requirements may result in the removal of a faculty member regardless of status. The evaluation process shall be established by the board and provided to all faculty members by January 1st, 2025 to become effective on July 1, 2025. Now, I don't know if tenure is actually defined anywhere in statute. I've done a little research. I've kind of come up with maybe somewhat of a definition. Tenure is the right to continuous full employment as a faculty member without reduction in rank, and there are various rankings within institutions until separation. Separation can be for a variety of reasons identified by the university and their policies, but mostly these reasons would include resignation, retirement, program reduction, financial exigency, or termination for cause. So tenure is non-absolute. We even have in language already. What this bill does is it redefines that. I think it clarifies that. It tries to get our universities aligned on the same thing. I would ask you this question. How many of you who work for a company out here or any type of employer, they have expectations of you and your job performance? They should explain to you what those expectations are. You should anticipate to get at least an annual review. I know I mentioned my children. Thankfully, they're gainfully employed now after they've got those degrees, but they have to go through job reviews, and this is just standardizing that process and including the language for performance and productivity requirements. We invest over $1 billion a year in our public institutions. The House Bill 6 that just came out, we had a 4% increase in the base. We increased the performance-based funding by $3.9 million, and each of our public institutions got approval for their number one capital construction project. I'm talking hundreds of millions of dollars. So we have a huge investment in higher education, and rightfully so, because we need post-secondary education to provide our employees of the future. This is a process that, if done properly, it should be a framework for continuous faculty improvement. And that's what it is. It's a review process to improve faculty, and if there are situations where faculty are not meeting those standards, the university should have an opportunity to remove that faculty member from their campus. I'll be happy to entertain any questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative Tipton. I do have a question to start off with. I know in your current role you get to communicate with a lot of people when it comes to education, and sometimes that may be college presidents. So I know that you've probably addressed college presidents with this bill or presented it to them. What are their thoughts? Do they support this bill? I'm just kind of interested what they may have to say about this bill.
I've had one college president reach out to me and express support for the bill. I have not directly heard from any of the other college presidents one way or the other. They have been silent on this. But knowing those college presidents, if they were absolutely opposed to it, I would have heard from them.
Thank you. Our next question is from Representative Bojanowski.
Thank you. Could you provide an example of what a performance or productivity requirement might be?
Well, as you read in the bill, each individual board would determine what that would be for their university. I would think that there are different roles that professors have. Some professors have more of a teaching role. Some professors have more of a research role. And then there are some faculty members that have a combination of those roles. It might be a requirement to teach a certain number of classes during a semester. That's one example. It could be. It could be actually. I'm going to give you an example, personal example from a child had a class a few years ago. It wound up being an online class, and the class consisted of video of the professor teaching this class 4 or 5 years prior. Every class session was just video from 4 or 5 years prior. There was no opportunity to interact with that professor. There was no opportunity to ask questions. And quite frankly, I was very disappointed in that, because I don't think my child got the full value of that class. So I think those are some of the kind of examples, but that would be up to each university board to determine, and it may differ based on the rank or the classification of the faculty member, what those requirements would be.
May I make a comment?
Yes, yes, you may.
So, without knowing really what performance and productivity standards or requirements are, my first read was a little bit concerning, because it's possibly holding the professor liable for the student's achievement, in that what it makes me think about is, if you're a physician treating a certain kind of cancer, and you might do your job really, really well. You might come to work every day and have the best research and do everything per standards of that day and time, but your patient may still die because of that kind of cancer. If a physician's standards were keeping their patients alive, this physician would be considered at failure. And so kind of extending that back into education, I think in a lot of states in this nation, teachers are held accountable directly for their students' test scores, where there are so many factors. Yes, the education setting and a situation, as you explained, or professors who don't come to school, well, that's very clear. But depending on what the performance requirements are, whether it's to have so and so many people pass the class with a certain score, there are a lot of things out of your realm of control. And so that's sort of my thought as I read that requirement. And I will probably kind of seek out more. I understand many of these standards are already set, the requirements, in our higher ed system. And so I'm going to seek out and figure out a little more about what those standards are. Thank you.
That's why we're doing this for discussion only today. I will add that in the current statute, the reasons for removal include incompetency, neglect of or refusal to perform their duty, or immoral conduct. Those are things that are not necessarily cut and dry either, depending on the interpretation. It's been my experience from talking, most of these reviews are peer-driven reviews by their peers who are there. And I would think that if peers are serious about their job and about that, they would be fair-minded to their colleagues. But if there is a problem, they don't want that problem to stay there. And I know one example in one institution this was brought by peers. It went through the department, it went through the college, went all the way to the board with over 200 pages of documentation. And the board still chose not to remove that faculty member. And I'm just going to be frank, I think a lot of it is because of fear of litigation for the termination is what prevents a lot of this. And that's why we're having this conversation, to see if we can move forward on this issue.
Okay, Representative Wilner.
Thank you very much. Thank you for explaining all of that, and I think it's you're raising a lot of really important issues here. One question I have, all the universities have accrediting bodies, and I wonder how this legislation would interact with those accrediting bodies, and the ability of our universities to remain accredited.
I'm not aware of any issue. I haven't talked to SACS, but I've got their cell phone number, so I can give them a call and ask them about that.
Thank you. And may I ask one further question?
Sure.
Thank you. Are you aware of any other states that have had similar legislative action like this? And if so, how it may have affected recruitment and retention?
I believe there are some other states. I've read, and right now I couldn't tell you specific examples, but I believe there are some other states that have taken action, and I just have to research a little bit more. I don't know how recent that action has been taken, but I know there has been some activity similar to this in other states.
Thank you.
Representative Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Tipton, thank you for your work on this. And looks like you've been busy during the interim with all these bills that you've brought in front of us today. But
I'm
thank
not
you.
done yet.
Oh, you're not done yet. Well, thank you for your work on that. I guess my question: I woke up this morning with probably over 100 emails on House Bill 228, and I'm sure others on this committee did too, and haven't had a chance to read all of them yet. But have you heard, feedback from these people that, are so concerned about this that we got over 100 emails? Just wondering if you had talked to any of them or if they'd reached out to you and what those comments might be, what their fear of, if they're doing their job, what their fear might be of losing their job.
I did receive those emails. I suspect everybody on the Education Committee did. They started coming in about mid-afternoon from faculty members. I don't think I have got one from one of my constituents yet. I've been looking through them. You will find that the emails are almost identical in text. A lot of them come from university email accounts, government property. That's another point. Typically, I think it's fear of the unknown. They've probably been told the tenure is going to be taken away from them. One member of this committee shared with me that a faculty member had reached out to them and said they could be removed for having a difference in ideology. That is not in this legislation. That's not the intent of this legislation. It's not the wording of this legislation. Too often, people read one line of a bill and they read something on social media and they react. But this is going to give us the time to dig in and have conversations about this issue. And I welcome the suggestions, the comments, and if there are improvements, I'm more than open to trying to resolve those.
Representative Rayburn.
Thank you, Chairman, for this bill. I've got a question, and you kind of talked about it with your statements just now and also just a few minutes ago, but on page 2 where it refers to immoral conduct, obviously there's some terms in this bill that are overly broad, but would this be the standard of immorally broad to the college and their standards of morals, or is this by definition immoral? That may seem like a silly question, but I think we need clarification on that.
I think that's pre-existing language that was already in the statute, immoral conduct, and different people can have different views about what immoral conduct is. And I think that definition has changed over time. We've got a few minutes, I think, to get through the next bill, so I will share a story. I'll tell on myself a little bit. When I was in high school, I was a member of the Explorers Club. It was all-boys club, and we did things. And one year during Christmas break, we went to Washington, D.C. And we stayed on an Air Force base there. I think it was Andrews we stayed at. We got to see everything. And, of course, the advisor, good man, bunch of teenage boys, he took us to an R-rated movie. Back in the day, I'm talking about back in the early 70s, and don't think badly of me, but the reason that movie was R-rated, where there was one scene in that movie where a lady had her blouse removed and you could see her in her bra. That's what made that movie an R-rated movie. Now, the definition of immoral conduct has lessened over time, and it's not very objective. I'm open to trying, if we can clarify that. I've already had one conversation with an individual this morning about that definition. I'm open to seeing if we can explain that. But I think that's one of those instances where I believe it was a Supreme Court justice. I better be careful on the stories I'm telling. And they were trying to define pornography. And he said, I know it when I see it. So I think this, again, this might be one of those cases where universities are fearful of moving forward for fear of litigation because what's clearly defined as immoral conduct and what's not. But I'm open to having conversations about if there's a way to have better language there.
Okay, we got Representative Raymond.
Thank you. Sponsor, you use the word conformity. You say the goal of this legislation is conformity, but you note that each institution would establish different performance and productivity standards. So I wonder what leads you to think that there will be conformity?
There's conformity in the fact that every institution is required to do a review once every 4 years. There's conformity in the fact that this language is the same in all three sections for all universities, but it does lead the universities some leadway in determining what those requirements are. We have Research One institutions, UK, U of L. We have our comprehensive university. We have our community colleges. They have different missions. They have different goals. So it does give them the leadway to make those decisions based on. Now, if I went in here and wrote down what I thought, you might not like what I put in here for what production and performance standards are. But it does lead that to the university to make those decisions. But it gives them all that same guidance to do that.
May I ask another question, please?
Yeah, I guess.
So we've seen a trend in higher education. I think people on both sides of the aisle will agree. We've seen a trend to please students, who are your consumers, right? And we've seen grade inflation in higher ed in recent years. One argument for tenure as a concept in this era of cancel culture, right, is to protect people who teach difficult and uncomfortable content that can challenge young people. Do you have any concerns that by removing these protections on professors that that people on both sides of the aisle won't be able to teach content that challenges our young people and their parents' ideologies?
I would certainly hope not. We often hear the expression academic freedom, and the intent of this legislation is not to have anything to do with academic freedom. I think we have seen a trend in our public universities across this country that you call it cancel culture. You will see a guest speaker is invited. The students don't like that guest speaker. They protest. That guest speaker is removed, those sorts of things. Our university should be a place where we can have open and civil debate. Well, I guess I'm going to tell another child story now. A child had a class, political science class, during the last presidential election. The professor was lean one way in that election, and every day was spent bashing the other candidate. And the whole class just rolled into that. And my daughter felt very uncomfortable in that setting. She felt like she could not freely express herself. These are not easy conversations. I don't want to punish anybody. We need to have these conversations. It's certainly not the intent of this legislation to inhibit a professor from teaching something that's difficult. If students don't cut the grades, give them an F. That's how we learn. I think we have this, unfortunately, society has evolved into, if you don't agree with me on an issue, you're my enemy. That's not the way the world should be. Because to me, the goal of having these types of conversations is that you may not persuade somebody else to change their mind, but perhaps you have a better understanding of where that person is coming from. And that way we can grow closer together. So it's certainly not my intent to do that. Again, we're having this for discussion only, so we can have these conversations. So I appreciate your question, and we'll continue the conversation.
Mr. Chairman, may I make a comment?
Yes, one comment.
Thank you.
You're still in shock I went to an R-rated movie, I know.
So this is the first time that I had read the statute, the existing statute. And in reading the existing statute, I'm actually pleased at how comprehensive I feel that it is. And without professors or presidents at the table with you today, right, I'm wondering if we've got the wrong target. Right? I think this bill casts suspicion on hundreds or thousands of high-performing professors, when really we might need to look at presidents or deans or boards who are not enforcing the current strong statute for incompetency and neglect, which would catch the guy who's showing 4-year-old videos.
This statute also includes presidents. They are included in this statute. If you read the entire text, if you read the very first page, it says, "But no president, professor, or teacher shall be removed except for these reasons." So this statute applies to presidents as well, where they would be held to these performance and productivity requirements.
All right, Representative Bowman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Chair Tipton, for bringing House Bill 228. I deeply appreciate the efforts you put into bringing accountability to our institutions for higher learning. I do have a question regarding the evaluation time frame, and that it would be every 4 years. So to me, 1,460 days without an evaluation seems too long. So I'm curious how you arrived at that 4-year time frame, and would you be open to considering annual evaluations instead of that 4-year period?
I think the part of the reason for that is a lot of the contracts are 4 years, as I've been told, for professors. I'm open to this. This legislation does not prevent an institution from doing an evaluation more often than not. Again, this is a starting point with the legislation. We can have that conversation if we want to lower that. But this is where we landed at on the first draft.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, that does conclude our discussions on House Bill 228. So now we're going to move on to House Bill 162. House Bill 162. So, Chair Tipton, if you have any presenters that's going to join you.
I do have some presenters to join me if they'll come forward. Morning, Mickey. Yeah, just grab an extra. Yes, grab an extra. Yes, make sure that mic is turned on.
Okay, we're going to ask you guys to introduce yourselves, and then I will swear you guys in.
I think you know who I am, Representative James Tipton.
Good morning, Kelly D. Long, Executive Director, Kentucky Center for Mathematics.
Mickey Ray, Chief Academic Officer, the Kentucky Department of Education.
Anthony Myers, Executive Director of Advanced Kentucky.
All right, at this time, go ahead and raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
I do.
All right, proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've been talking about this legislation for some time, letting you know that I was working on this. You may recall that in the 2022 session, we passed Senate Bill 9 along with Senator West, which dealt with early literacy. I think we're all aware that we have an issue with reading and math, not only in our state, but in our country. We're not where we need to be. We're taking the steps in early literacy. This legislation, I think, is just a follow-up effort to that, to address the issue of math. I firmly believe that if we can get a firm foundation for our students in reading and math, it will help them be successful in all their other endeavors, academic, in life, and it's very important. So I won't go into a whole lot now. I know that there is a PowerPoint presentation that Mickey has prepared for you, so I will let her now go into. She's got a little bit of background information on what the issue is and the problem we have and the specifics of the legislation. So please proceed, Mickey.
Thank you, Chair Tipton. Thank you, Co-Chair Truitt and Co-Chair Baker and members of the committee. Just happy to be here today to be able to discuss the possibility of moving forward with this legislation. And I would especially like to thank Representative Tipton for his leadership and for his focus on critical needs within the educational system, not only around the literacy space, but certainly in the area of mathematics as well. So I want to begin, and I hope that you can see that okay. That's a little bit better there. So I wanted us to be able to start again by looking at some of our Kentucky Summative Assessment data. And the graph here shows you not only Kentucky Summative Assessment, but K-Prep data that goes back to 2018. And I think the point here is that if you look, for example, at 2019, so our fourth graders were scoring 47% at the proficient and distinguished level. In 2020, they did not test as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. When they were then in sixth grade, their performance at proficient and distinguished has dropped to 29%, and there has been a bit of a rebound. And again, we had a new testing system in place in 2022 at 38% proficient and distinguished at grade 7, and then 36% at grade 8. And I think what is most concerning here is that clearly none of us in education and none of us across the Commonwealth are okay with these numbers for students. And so when we start talking about why mathematics, why does it deserve attention and support for educators, I think the reality of our data is that students do need extra support in the area of mathematics. And this is not only an educational issue, but this has workforce implications that you are well aware of as they advance through their K through 12 education and on to what we hope is a successful experience in college and career. And so here you can see that we have approximately 140,000 students between the period of 2018 and 2023 at grade 4 and beyond who are not scoring at the proficient level or above. The next slide is just a look at the subgroups. And so you can see there for fourth grade, it is concerning. If you look at, just as an example, African American students in grade 4, there's 57% novice. If you look at economically disadvantaged, nearly half of those students are scoring at the novice level. Students with disabilities with an IEP at 53%. And English learners at 52%. If you take a look at the 8th grade band, it's even more concerning. And we think that that is due to the fact that mathematics is cumulative in nature. And so all of those skills that they are learning, beginning really in kindergarten through 3rd grade, the foundational numeracy is important. But the legislation is specifically targeting grades 4 through 8 because at grade 4, mathematics becomes more complex and students start dealing with irrational numbers, fractions, percentages. And so as they advance beyond, it's much more difficult for those students to catch up if they don't have a command of that learning beginning at grade 4 with those irrational numbers. And so you can see there when we get to 8th grade, you have, again, African American students at 58% novice. Only 15% of them are scoring at proficient and distinguished in 2023. Looking at economically disadvantaged, 45% novice, only 25% of those students at proficient and distinguished. Students with disabilities, IEP, you can see only 12% are at proficient and distinguished. And English learners at 8%. And students deserve more from us than that, and we want to set them up to be successful. And I truly believe that educators are doing all that they can, and we know that in middle school, it's much more difficult to find highly trained teachers. That is a critical shortage area, and there was a recent OEA report in November of 2023 that pointed to that very thing. It is difficult to find teachers for middle school mathematics and for high school mathematics. So we hope that with the attention of the bill on math education and with the resources that would come along in association with the bill, we could start to train and retain those teachers, specifically in the middle school space as well. I want to give you a national comparison. So this is NAEP results. And again, you can see here of that second bullet, in 2022, Kentucky ranked 32nd in the nation for grade 4 math and 39th for grade 8 math. And so what we see in the first chart, you've got the grade 4 there. And so we are in line with the national average, but we are below the national average. But at 8th grade, there's a much more significant gap there. So something must be done to support those teachers and support those students as they they move into more complex mathematics, and to ensure that those students have access to grade level learning so that they are better equipped to transition then into high school, where there's even more rigorous coursework for mathematics. This is just a state map, and so I won't spend a lot of time here, but I did want you to see that. So Kentucky is one of 18 states who are significantly lower than the national average. You can see there were 19 states who performed significantly higher and 16 states who are not significantly different. And in thinking about that, when considering some of our other surrounding states, so Indiana, for example, made a significant investment in high-intensity tutoring, both for literacy and for mathematics. Nebraska did something very similar. And so the intent of the legislation and the focus of Representative Tipton is to ensure that teachers have training and support in the specific pedagogy and content knowledge of math around grade 4 through grade 5 or through grade 8, so that they are better equipped to meet the diverse needs of students within mathematics who are in their classrooms day in and day out. I thought this was especially powerful. I wanted you to see this. It is a little bit dated. I will say that in advance. So it's from 2012, but it was so perfectly aligned to 4 through 8 and the intent of the legislation. You can see here it's talking about the likelihood of students catching up. And because math content is cumulative in nature, it is very difficult for students to catch up if they are far behind. So you can see here in the first portion of this graphic, the chance of meeting 8th grade math expectations based on 4th grade performance. So 4th graders who are on track have an 82% chance of meeting 8th grade mathematics outcomes. If they are off track, that drops down to 46% likelihood that they're going to meet 8th grade expectations. If they are far off track, that's only a 10% chance that they'll meet those expectations. And similarly for 8th grade, if an 8th grader is on track for meeting expectations in 8th grade, they are 70% likely of actually meeting 12th grade expectations in mathematics. If they are off track at 8th grade, again, they are only 19% chance of a likelihood of meeting 12th grade mathematics expectations. And at far off track, they're only a 3% likelihood that those students will actually meet 12th grade mathematics expectations. So there is a compelling case for the supports being strategically targeted in grades 4 through 8 due to the complexity of the mathematics learning that begins as grade level expectations during that time. And so Representative Tipton's bill has several comprehensive actions that are in place to strategically address supports for mathematic outcomes from 4 through 12. It would provide the opportunity for us to have statewide professional learning supports and we have 2 of our state level partners here with us today. There's a focus on Tier 1 instruction and strengthening Tier 1 instruction, and that will be coupled by the fact that there are supports within the bill to provide funding for purchase of high quality instructional resources for mathematics specifically. Thirdly, there's a mathematics improvement plan that is incorporated into the legislation, and that, the professional learning and the focus on Tier 1 and access to high quality resources is imperative. But for those students, if we're going to meet the needs of all students, there have to be extra supports there. And that's already required in statute as a part of MTSS, but this would allow us to have strategically designed improvement plans to meet the instruction and intervention needs of students based on their data around a universal screener and a diagnostic assessment that is a part of the requirements of the bill. It improves family and community engagement. So parents are a part and families are a part of the mathematics improvement team. They receive regular reporting in terms of the student progress toward proficiency. And it also has a component related to teacher preparation and certification. And some of the questions that we're having, not only about why grades 4 through 8 and why not early numeracy. In addition to that, people are asking around the timeline and some concerns like, are we doing too much too soon in light of the comprehensive literacy legislation that has passed in 2022 connected to Read to Succeed. But I wanted you to see here, I think that this is a powerful look into Section 1 around what is actually immediately effective. And these things schools and districts are already implementing, but it allows us to clarify some of the expectations around MTSS and what high quality mathematics instruction actually looks like. So within Section 1, it establishes for every elementary school, they're receiving comprehensive school-wide mathematics instruction. So K through 3 and foundational numeracy is absolutely a part of this legislation, and teachers of K through 3 could participate in the professional learning. They could experience the supports provided in a high-quality instructional resource. But it's that mathematics improvement plan that is actually placed within grades 4 through 8 due to, again, that complex nature of mathematics, that shift that happens at grade 4. It also provides a multi-tiered system of support to ensure that students are set up to be successful in mathematics by the end of grade 5. And you can see that this is paralleled also in that middle school band as well. So you have those same MTSS supports by the end of grade 8 and access to high quality instruction and grade level mathematics content to support students in advancing towards proficiency. In terms of district and school responsibilities and their timeline. So the very first deadline or requirement that is in place in the legislation occurs as of January 1, 2025. So if the bill were to pass this session, approximately a year from now, superintendents would be charged with selecting a KDE determined valid and reliable universal screener and diagnostic assessment. And that's a very important step because it's the screening and diagnostic that allows educators to make the very purposeful decisions in terms of what students need in that moment to be able to improve and to show growth in the area of mathematics. One thing I did want to mention, so this was already a requirement of Read to Succeed for literacy screeners and diagnostics, and overwhelmingly districts across our state have adopted MAP Growth and iReady as their screeners. And we have already done the research and we can confirm that those would be valid and reliable screeners. The classification accuracy is solid for both MAP Growth and for iReady, and we would want to ensure that we have a more extensive list than those two, but I think that those two would have the most impact on local districts because that's already what they're using. It's important for teachers to be trained on those. Teachers have to know how to administer the screener and diagnostic, but also make the instructional moves based on the data that they find on the individual student needs. And then there is language that would have superintendents adopt a common Tier 1 high-quality instructional resource for mathematics, and that is for grades 4 through 8. So we know that this is a significant need at middle school, but we also think that there would be implications in the elementary space as well due to that purchase of an HQIR. Again, beginning in 25-26, so not this next academic year, but the one following that, that is when the requirements for the mathematics improvement plan would be in place and the need to have more accelerated interventions for students and intentional instructional services. And so we feel that with that time, that's again 2 academic years away from now, schools and districts can be preparing for those requirements. And there is some concern about inverted MTSS triangles. So we know that Tier 1 instruction is the instruction that all students receive every day. When you start looking at Tier 2 and Tier 3 supports, that should be narrowed to those students who have the greatest need. I would argue that if there are concerns about inverted triangles and so many students needing mathematics improvement plans, that will never be corrected without the supports that are actually required in the legislation. So Tier 1 will provide increased support for all of those kids, but it's not going to meet the needs of every single student because the skill levels are differentiated based on the findings from the screener and the diagnostic. So this allows for school and district leaders, for teachers to plan and prepare very intentionally for the supports that an individual student would need. And you can see the last bullet there. It also provides supports for parents and families at home in terms of how they can do some mathematical work there to be successful in school. And, when we think about those 8th grade numbers, we know that parents are not caring less about their 8th graders than they are 4th graders. And certainly educators are not caring less. But we think it is because of the complexity of the mathematics that it does become more difficult for parents to support students at home if they are not highly skilled in mathematics themselves. For the department, we would be given the opportunity to collaborate with Advanced Kentucky, with the Kentucky Center for Mathematics, and with PIMSR to support educators with access to high-quality, evidence-based professional learning. That is a significant need. We currently do not have the funding supports to be able to partner with our leaders in mathematics across the state to ensure that teachers have access to high quality professional learning in that area. So by September 1 of 2025, if the funding is appropriated, we would move to establish the Teacher Academy, similar to what we've been able to do with literacy. So those would be opt-in supports for teachers and educators, as well as thinking about the framework for a coaching model in the space of mathematics. And I know this committee has heard many times the benefits of having a job-embedded instructional coach coming alongside of teachers in the area of both literacy and mathematics. And then lastly, it would allow us to provide grants to local districts going toward the purchase of high-quality instructional resources in mathematics and the associated professional learning that must be in place to ensure that teachers know how to effectively use those resources. And then my last slide is the look at post-secondary and EPSB, so their timeline. You can see there the legislation does require CPE to submit reporting to an external evaluator to really have a look at the sort of the state of the union in terms of mathematics education and higher ed. It also requires teacher preparation programs, and this actually begins in 25-26 as well, to have targeted evidence-based instructional strategies, allowing pre-service teachers to engage with high-quality resources that they would hopefully find at the district level, at the school level where they are placed. And then also really looking at the assessment programming and processes for mathematics. So we would hope that in teacher preparation programs, they're already looking at diagnostic data, at screener data, and thinking how they can better serve students based on the skills that they have of need. It does prioritize field placement, which is a new addition to this particular piece of legislation that is different from Read to Succeed. So it's prioritizing their placement with teachers who are of high quality in mathematics and model those things that you would see within both Section 3 of the legislation and stated here in that second bullet. And it requires EPSB as of January 1, 2025 to maintain a list of approved mathematics tests, to develop an evaluation rubric for observing teacher candidates with a specific focus in mathematics, and also a last component, forgive me. I will get there. To report program data to an external evaluator, again, with the goal of increasing new teacher candidate success. And the intent here is that we're making an investment in pre-service teachers so that they are able to begin set up for success to the degree that is possible after they graduate and enter into the workforce. And so I want to make sure that our partners also have time to share a few comments. So Representative Tipton, if it's okay with you, I'll yield the floor.
One word of advice if you're working on legislation, surround yourself with people who know a lot more than you do. Go ahead, Kelly.
Good morning, everyone. The Kentucky Center for Mathematics has a long history of success in the Commonwealth. In your packet, we have a KCM impact report. I think the best thing that we can say is that we have been so small and mighty. That's the thing about KCM. We have been so small and mighty with regards to the work that we are doing. But in that space, in that elementary space, moving into a DAPA middle school there, we have shown great success. There are several little graphs from the American Institutes of Research that talk about the cost effectiveness of our professional learning that we do. It turns around and really has a beautiful effect. And I also want to say that we have years of experience in that math coaching. So we partner with some of the best minds across the state of Kentucky in our universities. We have faculty associates from U of L, University of Kentucky, Western Kentucky. One of the things that's important to you all is that teacher prep program, and one of our very own Dr. Kenita DeClue that was with us last time when we presented, she has that A+ teacher prep program. And so we are happy to say that in math education, we know the people. We know the people, and we've done the work. And should this be a funded mandate, this would be a beautiful thing because we can scale. That's the most important thing. I do want to thank you for the questions that you had with regards to our August presentation. You saw that we did a couple math summits. And so I delivered the information with regards to the math summit. We were bringing together lots of good teacher and mathematics experts. And quite honestly, the synthesis of that information, we gave it to Representative Timpton, and he condensed it and added it into this legislation. So we want to go on record that the Kentucky Center for Mathematics is in full support of this bill. And in addition, on your mark, get set, go. We're buckling in for the boots on the ground work needed to make this a collaborative effort across the Commonwealth.
Good morning. Those of you who know Advanced Kentucky most likely know us as an AP program. We've been working in the state since 2008, supporting AP, math, science, and English teachers. We have very strong opinions about advanced math and access to advanced math. So we're very excited to see this proposed bill and very supportive of it. One of the things that we've noticed since we've done our work, is that there are barriers to students to take advanced coursework. And one of the barriers that emerged most dramatically through the work time and time again was the students' access to algebra and when they took algebra. So you'll see that we now have a program under Advanced Kentucky called Access to Algebra. So important, we created a whole program around it. And we promoted the conversation and asked the question of when should a student take it, which if you haven't had this conversation, there are strong opinions about this, and rightly so, because it is a pivotal course in a student's journey in their math education. But we didn't pretend to have the answer when we started out because we don't know. We're starting to know. But notice the program is named Access to Algebra, and you should have a separate slide with you, I think. Okay. So this is the only thing I'm going to show you today, and it's data. It's not university research data. It is correlative data that we've seen in the program, working now for six years with 30 or so schools. And if you look down at the bottom, there's about 7,000 students in this data set. And what you're looking at are two sets of students in 8th grade. Okay, all students have the same thing in common. They were in the same school in 7th grade as they were in 8th grade. So we call those complete students. They didn't immigrate in or out between 7th and 8th. So we had baseline scores for them in 7th grade, looking at growth scores in 8th grade. So on the x-axis, you have their 7th grade score, and on the y-axis, you have their average growth. Okay, they're pretty simple. The two sets of students, though, had a different experience in 8th grade. The blue band took either an 8th grade honors math class or below, and the orange band took an Algebra 1 class or above. And what's to note about this, what I think is most noteworthy, if you look at the, if you look at the box in the center, 430 is the goal for this particular assessment that a student is trying to achieve to be on track to be ready for, be math ready by the time they graduate, right? As they approach 430, though, that growth diminishes. And that was a bit alarming when we first looked at this. But what we've interpreted this as is that's a ceiling on the content that they're exposed to. So it's not to say that we need to rush out and promote policies that say every student must take algebra. We've tried that in the past. There are terms called algebra for all that have been around for a while. But we want schools to ask the question of what students are ready, what courses should they be offered, and what supports do we need in those schools to support those teachers to expose more students to that rigorous math, so that they can then pursue the advanced math in high school and pursue the rigorous post-secondary degrees that we want them to pursue. Thank you.
All right, thank you guys for your presentation. Having some math-minded people here at the podium, I want to throw a question out for you. We talk a lot in this committee about proficiency. So I'm going to put you on the spot. Explain to my colleagues the difference in average, above average, proficiency. Whoever wants to take that, take it.
I'll take that.
Okay.
I'll take that one. What we think that is important with our students in Kentucky is that we have that strong Tier 1, allows the students to know and understand those grade level standards and to be proficient. We need to have those students mastering those grade level proficiencies. And so when we see the numbers that are so novice, and you know this as a principal, we do this data dive. When you see so many numbers that are novice, really nice kids coming to school trying really hard, then we've got a Tier 1 problem. And so we've all agreed that we can't intervene our way out of a Tier 1 problem. So proficiency is based on a child getting the exposure to the grade level material, and then getting the support that they need when they're falling behind in, let's say, 4th grade fractions, and that they make it to the finish line at their assessment in the spring. And so proficiency is we're moving them over to say, we know that they have mastered that important grade level.
Okay. Carry on. I know you want to speak. Go ahead.
I would like to comment on the fact that there's two parts to this. There's the number and what we do with the number, and I think what we do with the number is more important than the number that we assign the student. We've seen this over and over and over with the college readiness program, with the AP students that we work with the middle school teachers and the middle school students that we work with. Students have different. We don't teach them in isolation. We don't teach math in isolation. There are a lot of factors that go into a student being average, being proficient, or whatever in a given time, right? And sometimes they accelerate, sometimes they don't. But it's all about how we treat that student and how we use that number. And we always advocate for leaving as many opportunities for that student open as long as we can. So I would just want to add that to that.
Okay. So can we agree that proficient is above average? Anybody?
So I would say based on our standards, which again undergo the process of review every 6 years, they establish what is the baseline, what should be mastered at grade level each year. And it's the committees who come together and support the accountability model and the assessment system that set some of those cut scores. And so that is transient, but our standards remain. And so that's what I believe we're advocating for, that all students deserve access to the grade level learning that's established in the standards. And if they're not meeting proficiency, what can we do as educators to help to accelerate that process so that they will be more successful in those mathematics outcomes?
Okay. And the reason I ask you that is because those are conversations I have with my parents, daily, and even my teachers daily about the difference in being proficient and a difference in being average or above average. And a lot of times I get into national percentiles. A lot of times for parents, it's a little easier for them to understand that, if you're above 50, you're above average. They understand that. But if you're above 50, according to iReady, you're not proficient. Right. So that's kind of the discussions that we have to have. Sometimes we can make education look, bleak, look kind of bad, by saying our proficiency numbers are really low. In reality, they may not be as bad as that looks because proficiency is tough. I'm a middle school and high school math certified teacher. I could go anywhere in the state and work tomorrow because there's nobody out there to do it. So it's one of those things that, I've got some great reading teachers in my elementary school. I mean, they're great. But it takes a special person to be able to teach math. So I'm going to ask you one more question. In your all's expert opinion, how do we get more people who are math-minded to join the education world? How do we do that?
So without looking like you set me up for this question, I think it is a matter of ensuring that they're supported when they take on that position. So at middle school, there are more alternative certifications than in elementary, for example. So if those teachers who have expertise in math are able to come into an educational setting and have the support to know how to bring that material to students in an engaging, vibrant way, I think that will also address retention. So it's access to their professional learning, as well as access to those resources. I don't have the study with me, and I can get that for you, Representative Truitt, but there is research that shows that access to a high-quality resource can elevate that teacher performance up to the 80th percentile, and it also is effective in retaining teachers because they're not overburdened by having to go out and find all of their own resources to teach these very complex concepts. So that access to a high-quality resource as well as the professional learning is without a doubt in my mind a way to improve not only the quality of the teaching experience, but also the retention piece that we are so desperate to maintain and to have.
I'd like to add 2 sentences, and that is that the teacher academies that are embedded in the legislation is the place where you go to hang with the people that make you better. And Kentucky Center for Math has the Kentucky Math Teacher Leaders, and what it does is we just can really get together and be a collegial group of thought partners that raise our game. To be a 5th grade teacher in an elementary school, Mr. Truitt, is a lonely place. You're it. You might have a partner, but more times than not in the Commonwealth of Kentucky in these days with Zoom and webinars, you don't have to travel. You can be together and hang with your folks. And so I dare say that the academies, once we can have a wonderful principal like yourself that say, I see the math teacher in you, will you give it a go? And they're so scared and they're so frightened. We say, but I'm going to hook you up with teacher academies across the Commonwealth of Kentucky, and you're going to find your friends. And then we all share materials and support being modules of materials, supports being routines, supports being evidence-based skills. So,
and I'd like to piggyback off of that. I mean, we have a pretty small staff for the work that we do. I say we have a small staff. We have a small immediate staff, but we annually contract with over 100 Kentucky teachers that are getting it done every day. Mm-hmm. And the opportunity to allow those teachers to go out and mentor other teachers has been one of the strongest impacts of our program. A good teacher can share, and it's something I worry about at times as we look at teacher turnover in schools. The message that we give our schools as they leave our program is identify the next person up, right? Because before that teacher leaves and that expertise leaves and that experience leaves, get someone else exposed to it so that it can continue on. And we through that mentor network, we try to do that with other schools too, who have either lost it or feel like they need it. And that has been the strongest impact in our program.
Okay, thank you. Got quite a few questions. We'll probably have to limit some of these because we have some other people that's signed up to speak. So, Representative Bojanowski.
Thank you very much. I want to start with I loved algebra. And I think part of this was, in 7th grade in Jefferson County in 1977, I was in TV math. We literally had television math with a couple of math aides who were in our yearbook. And my mom moved me out of there and into a pre-algebra, and that was the beginning of my love for mathematics. My question is, so in the legislation, it states for students grades 4 through 8th needing to make accelerated progress. Could you just comment I'm a special ed teacher. Sometimes just making standard, ordinary grade level progress is a challenge, and I want to understand what is meant by accelerated progress.
Thank you for the question, Representative Bojanowski. So that would be determined by the performance on the universal screener that, as you know, goes to all students. And those who are identified at being at risk of not meeting grade level benchmarks would then be given the diagnostic. And that diagnostic would share the skills that that student needs to practice to work on that would accelerate their progress towards proficiency. So it's more about the intent of that opportunity to have more learning and intervention around the specific skills that are identified in the student's diagnostic assessment. And that mathematics improvement plan could address both instructional and intervention moves.
Thank you. If I may make a brief
quickly.
comment.
Yep.
Okay. So I was a very strong supporter of Read to Succeed, and there's not really anything in this bill that I have concerns about. But let me tell you where my concern is, and it's on the ground, and it has to do with what we do with our students who are struggling. And there's a strong tension, a very strong tension between addressing our Tier 3 students, who in Rep. Truitt's example would be below average, and then our students who may be above average on a screener like iReady, but aren't yet proficient. And especially with the budget language, with schools and districts and boards having to post test scores, those resources, I believe, are going to be addressed more to the children who would satisfy the test score requirement, to the detriment of our Tier 3 students who really need those foundational skills and that MTSS programming to be intensive. So I think this is something, and I've spoken a little bit with Rep. Tipton, and I think this is something we need to look at, is how do we support our Tier 3 kids who have the reading plan, who might have the math plan, but will have limited resources in the building, and that support isn't actually what's measured on our accountability testing. So how can we integrate into our accountability knowledge that students, people say all the time a student can't read because they don't score on an end-of-year test. That's not true. Lots of those kids can read. They may not be able to reason. They may not have the background knowledge, the content, or the desire to spend that time on the test. But we can measure whether or not students can read. And we can measure those foundational skills that you would find on a diagnostic. It's just not what's measured on our accountability. And I think that's something that we need to have conversations on in the future. Thank you.
Okay, Representative Wilner.
Thank you. Thank you. It's great to see the experts at the table, and I also love math, so I love having you here. A lot of what I want to say has been touched on already, and I just really want to share a couple of personal observations. One is I'm often shocked and amazed when I hear general education teachers, elementary school, say, I'm not a math person, or I hate math, or, I don't do math. And so, just, I guess, a larger question of how do we change the language around that? We would never have a teacher say, I hate reading, or I'm not good at reading. And it's as fundamental. The numeracy is as fundamental as literacy. So that's part one. The other thing that I wanted to share, someone very close to me was a first-year teacher. She was an certified eighth grade math teacher. Her first-year teacher, her students had not had a certified math teacher in either sixth grade or seventh grade. So she was brand new. They had never had, in their entire middle school career, had not had a certified math teacher. This young new teacher was told they're tested at the end of the year on eighth grade standards. We know that math is cumulative. You can't go backwards. Stick to those eighth grade standards. This person is no longer a teacher. We know that the teacher shortage, and Mickey, you touched on that. Several of you have touched on that. I feel like, and I like this bill. I like where this is going. I feel like our problems are so much more deep-rooted and fundamental than this bill can address. What do we do? And maybe I'm being alarmist. Maybe it's not as bad as I think it is, but I'm concerned.
I've been quiet for a while, Representative Wilner, so I'll address your question. I think in this legislation, some of the key components are the availability of evidence-based, quality, professional development. I understand what you're saying. Some people have a fear of math. Even teachers have a fear of math. That they don't feel qualified and they're not comfortable. But I think it's giving them the resources that will help them succeed in professional development and also in our teacher preparation institutions. I think it's vital that we have the right resources, those quality resources, to help them feel comfortable. And I would hope there are people out there who are. I think there are a lot more people who like math than we are. We're getting into a lot of issues here with the teacher shortage. It's competition with the private sector. I had a situation last year. A banker had a math degree, decided he wanted to teach at the middle school, but because of some of the issues with getting the certification, taking a pay cut, it just did not work for that individual. The principal was disappointed. Had a quality individual, so there's a lot of issues around this. But in this bill, we're trying to address how we can meet the student needs. But you are right. Representative Bojanowski is right. We need to look at the accountability system and the assessment system. I'm hoping that's something we can address in the future. But right now, we're focusing on how we can get the best teachers possible with the best resources and the best plans for these students on math.
Okay, we got Representative Jackson.
Thank you, Chair Truitt. I've got to confess, I didn't love algebra, but I loved my algebra teacher who's back here. Miss McGowan, are you back here? I did love my algebra teacher, but I didn't love algebra, so I've got to confess that up front. But we've got pretty deep in the weeds here this morning, and I'm going to need the dumbed-down version overview of this, but I have a couple of questions if I could. You talk about Tier 1, 2, and 3. Tier 1's a classroom teacher. Sounds like Tier 2 and Tier 3 needs to be a math coach or that type of thing. Is that what we're talking about?
So Tier 2, sometimes schools do this differently. It could be a specific interventionist that's hired separate who is not a classroom teacher. But I think because of the numbers, you can utilize Tier 1 teachers also at Tier 2, but then the Tier 3 would really need to be a highly trained person, most qualified to deliver that intervention.
We talked about that a little bit in our group meeting yesterday. I'm fearful that we're going to ask our regular classroom teachers to do much, much more. And I think it needs to be a math coach, like we do a reading coach or whatever. And do we have a physical note on this of what it would cost in order to do this across the state?
The department has come up with a request of $10 million in the first year and $15 million in the second year of the biennium. There was no line item for that in House Bill 6. The budget's not done yet, but we're still working on that.
Okay, and then my last thing is, I know you said it's hard to find middle school and high school math teachers. Do you think I think there's 14 school districts that start out at $34,000 a year for beginning teachers. Do you think that would be a deterrent to finding middle school and high school math teachers?
If I'm being honest, yes, sir, it would be.
Well, I thought you might say that. Thank you, Chair Tipton.
All right, Representative Timoney, keep it short, my friend.
Thank you, Chairman. Out of respect for time, just a simple yes or no on this one. Our state math standards are synced with the NAEP standards?
Not exactly, no, sir. So our state academic standards are actually more connected to national standards, but not necessarily NAEP specific.
Okay, and the reason why I say that is just, NAEP is the gold standard around conversations in Frankfurt about. And I just want to make sure that we're doing what we're supposed to. Is Algebra 2 the finish line for students with math education in schools?
So in 3305, it's not a short answer, I apologize, but in 3305, students are required to take Algebra 1 and Geometry as foundational coursework. They are also required to take 2 personalized courses in mathematics that should contain the standards beyond Algebra 1, but there's more flexibility. So it doesn't just have to be Algebra 2. It might be something more specific to their career pathway, etc.
My question is, are our building blocks along the way, 4th grade, 8th grade, and so on, are they built around that as the finish line?
Yes.
Kind of.
Yes.
Okay. The last thing I was going to say, I'm very, very optimistic about this, and I'm going to get behind it 1,000%. And for this one reason, I stay on social media quite a bit just to kind of keep my thumb on the pulse of kind of the feelings of things. And there's a Facebook group called Kentucky Teachers in the Know, and Alice Sloan does a really good job facilitating it. And I read some comments about the letters training, about the literacy training that we are currently going through, and the post was, gosh, this first part is really, really hard. I'm thinking about, bailing on this, any advice. And, sadly, a lot of times those posts delve into, how quick to retirement? How do I get out of this? Blah, blah, blah. And that was the exact opposite of the response. The first one was, girls, stick with it. The first part is awful. This is the best training I've ever done. And there were like 50 or 60 comments like, no, seriously, stick with it. And that's the type of energy we need behind education. That's exactly what we need. That's the energy and the positivity and the mojo that we need behind it. And if we can get 50% of that mojo behind this math stuff, we'll be moving in the right direction. So thank you for your work on this.
Mr. Chair, I know we have guests here. If any of the other members have questions, they can direct them to me and I can get them to the experts, but I know we're running short on time.
Okay. All right. At this time, we'll go ahead and ask the other people who, I guess the KEA representatives, to come to the table. All right, I'm going to go and let you guys introduce yourselves, please. Can you hit the green button there, please?
Joel Wolford, KEA Vice President.
Jana Bryant, District Math Instructional Coach.
Kelly Lindsay, High School Math Teacher, Fayette County.
Kumar Rashad, High School Math Teacher and Kentucky 2024 High School Teacher of the Year.
Thank you guys for being here. I want to ask that you raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? All right, we've got about 10 minutes, 12 minutes. We'll let you guys go ahead and carry on, and then if we got time for questions, we'll entertain questions.
All right. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. As I stated, my name is Joel Wolford. I'm an elementary school librarian from the Russell County School District, currently serving as KEA Vice President. I'd like to begin by thanking you for the opportunity for our members to speak regarding this bill. When the text of House Bill 162 was made available, while there were some concerns, our members who teach math were excited by it. They see the potential for good in this bill, and they would very much like to be part of the discussion going forward. As I said, I'm an elementary school librarian, so if you need to know the mathematics behind the Dewey Decimal System or baseball statistics, then I am your man. But since this bill is not focused on that, I'll turn the floor over to our members who are highly qualified and highly experienced math teachers.
So I am Jana Bryant, and I'm a K-12 District Math Instructional Coach from Owensboro, Kentucky. I'm also a National Board Certified Teacher in Mathematics with over 30 years experience teaching math from students ranging from grade 4 to adult. And Chad All wants to see me in a little bit because I was his teacher. So I'm excited to reconnect with him after all these years. All of you are invited to help recognize our National Board teachers. I've sent you an email to see if you want to come join us at Kentucky State University in February. So what do we need? One of the big things that I want to share with you is that I've, throughout these last probably 6 to 10 years, have also been what's called an Ed Reports reviewer. And so what that means is I continued, after we adopted high quality standards, to continue to increase my capacity to be able to help my colleagues and other schools in Kentucky and throughout the nation to actually make important decisions about selecting materials, adopting them, and adapting them. So in too many Kentucky classrooms, though, teachers and students still do not have access to these high-quality materials, these Tier 1 materials that you've already heard about. It's due to lack of funding, it's due to lack of guidance, and also just support for sustainability. We are not aware of how it really is going in our schools because we have not developed a model in Kentucky to be transparent with that and to actually inform parents and students and teachers what materials are available. Here with the numeracy bill, I would caution, however, one feedback that I want to give you from Senate Bill 9. In the language in Senate Bill 9, it says that a superintendent must select the same high-quality materials for every school in the district. For large schools, teachers need a voice in finding the aligned materials that will support their schools and their student needs. So that is a big caution for me. In mathematics, we have a lot more materials that are aligned, and you need to let us review them. Also, we need a focused plan that gives us time to train teachers for professional learning and ongoing support while we try these new materials. And this needs to not be just for grades 4 to 8. Some districts and teachers in Kentucky will tell you that for the first time since 2010, we have finally been able to buy some materials with our ESSER funds, and now they're gone. We also are having trouble due to the current continued shortages for job applications for math teachers. I'm like you. I can go anywhere tomorrow and get a job. Might even be able to argue your salary, and maybe we'll do a double bidding, right? So we need time and we also have a hard time finding subs. So this professional learning is going to have to occur outside of the school day and during the summer. If Kentucky does choose to focus on grades 4 to 8, we are going to need guidance on selecting a reliable screener. And teachers, I've been at this for 30 years, and I have done a lot of research and a lot of training. And I'm going to tell you, I do not feel comfortable. And I've taught adult, 4th grade to adult. I still do not feel comfortable providing deep interventions that we're talking about for Tier 2 and Tier 3. Now, Tier 1, yes, but I might be the unicorn in the bunch. So Chair Timpton and just members of our committee today, I just want to encourage you to convene a group of the most important stakeholders around mathematics education, our classroom teachers, and please collaborate and continue to share with us on what we think is working and what we know we need to support mathematics achievement for Kentucky students. And I think I speak for all of us when I say we want our kids to receive the best math instruction in the nation, but we need your funding and support to get this right.
Good morning. I'm Kelly Lindsay, and I am here as the old lady on the bunch. I will bow to Miss McGowan, though. I also graduated from Warren East High School. Thank you for letting me speak, and I want to share with you the lens that I come from as a classroom teacher. I have been teaching for 42 years in lots of classrooms. I've taught all grades, preschool through college classes. I'm a veteran. I have undergraduate degrees in music education and mathematics and a master's in mathematics and education, all from Kentucky schools. I'm proud to live here. I'm proud to teach here. But I didn't start there. In 2010, I was also certified as a national board teacher in mathematics. I've taught in every kind of situation you can possibly imagine. A boarding school in Nigeria, an Orthodox Jewish school in Washington, D.C., public, private schools in rural and urban settings, vocational schools, preschools, and post-secondary schools. Since 2005, I have taught in Kentucky public schools, here in Lexington and in Boone County. My current position is with Carter G. Woodson Academy in Fayette County Public Schools. I teach high school math to young men who are teenage boys every second of the day. It's an interesting and challenging and rewarding, most of the time, situation. I serve on the board of directors for the Kentucky Council of Teachers of Mathematics and am a member of the Kentucky Math Teacher Leaders cohort that Kelly DeLong was talking about through the Kentucky Center for Mathematics. I seek out ways to become a better teacher every time I can. I was privileged to work with KDE last year on the high quality math instruction workshop, and I mentor aspiring national board certification candidates and helped develop and lead training workshops for those mentors in Kentucky. I'm tired a lot of the time. I congratulate you, though, on several of the goals of House Bill 162. It has tremendous ambition for the promulgation of quality math and education in Kentucky. As a classroom teacher, I see the needs of my students every day. I talk with teachers every day about the needs of my students. I applaud the bill for calling for strategies to close gaps and meet the needs of all students. You have attempted to address the diversity of our students in this bill. We have everything in Kentucky, and I see that in just my classroom. I see everything. The creation of the Committee for Mathematics Achievement is a worthy way to bring together voices from all stakeholders, including classroom teachers. Too often, we feel that our voices are not heard and that we have no chair at the decision-making places. Many teachers would welcome to join you in the conversations that we need to have. The bill's incorporation of leadership from current organizations is also commendable. I have experience working with KCM and PIMSR. Both provided me with worthy training to improve my ability to work effectively with my students. KDE aspires to lead math teachers effectively into the future with continuing education opportunities also. We have wonderful faculty in our universities that are preparing the teachers that we do convince to come into mathematics. There are some things that cause me concern. I hope you will be able to address some of those things as you work on this bill. As a teacher, I am always concerned about time. I work hard, and there is never enough time to finish all of my mandated tasks. Please be mindful that we are dedicated to our students and to increasing their efficient use of math. It takes several hours to plan a unit of study and more hours to modify and adapt that unit of study as we find gaps and misunderstandings in our students' knowledge. This is true even though I have 40 years of algebra floating around in the back of my long-term memory. I still have to modify each day, sometimes during each class as I teach. I worry about the lack of new teachers and substitutes to fill my shoes in the future. I personally know of several Kentucky districts that started the school year with too few math teachers and are just making do. I wonder about money being available to provide the high-quality instructional materials referenced in our bill. Will teachers have time to become comfortably familiar with those materials and really use them before something new comes along? Will there be enough variety of materials to provide diversity of instruction needed without overwhelming us? I seem to worry whenever someone says they're going to solve all of my problems. Thank you so much for your time and your ears. I hope that you will bring in more teachers to have input about this bill. Hear us as we speak to our needs and concerns. We are the front line of education in Kentucky. Almost every teacher I have ever worked with loves to teach. I love to teach. Many teachers consider it a calling. It's difficult, but so important. Please hear our voices. I am a product of what dedicated teachers in Kentucky do. I am a first-generation college graduate on both sides of my family. Continuing education was not a priority before I came along. Because of me, my younger siblings had the opportunity to pursue higher education, and the next generation is actively encouraged to pursue education after high school. The words in this bill mean something to me and to many families in our state. Our mutual goal as legislators and educators is for every Kentucky child to have the resources to pursue their dreams, like I did. Let's work together for their future.
Kumar Rashad again. Thank you all for allowing us to speak here. Thank you, Representative Timoney, for the intention behind this. I definitely feel like it's a good intention, and I know it because I start on page 6 through number 16 through 19, and in there he's got a comprehensive plan to incorporate math into the curriculum of every subject, which is new because most of the time they want to incorporate literacy into every subject, which is very important and mentioned before. A lot of people say, I don't know math. And I'm like, yo, that's the most ignorant thing you could have ever said. Like, don't say that. You do math every single day. And it's just not quantified, especially not quantified on the test that we're given. But I do have a problem with words like valid and reliable. When we're talking about MAPS testing, and MAPS testing is a norm reference test. So a norm reference test means you will always have 50% of the people below 50. You'll always have 50% of the people above 50. You will never have a situation where over 50% of your population is above the 50 percentile. It's impossible in math. So, when we talk about, if you're talking about giving some punishments for things like that, if people don't reach the certain percentile, that's kind of analogous to cutting a man's leg off and then shooting him because he can't moonwalk. So, we got to do better and make realistic goals, and don't set teachers up and educators up for failure. Page 4, line 17 through 23 talks about students 4th to 8th grade reading accelerated progress. They're gonna get instructions and intervention. We got a teacher shortage. Where y'all get the teachers from? Where y'all get the teachers from? Where's the money for that? Where's the funding for any of this? It's just like another mandate that you got to put work on the teacher's plate, that we got to do more, and there's no support. Like many of the things. Page 3, 7 through 12, there's an odd list of skills on that page. I'm not even sure why deeper learning is so limited between lines 16 and 19. Stop limiting deeper learning. Deeper learning is what makes the kids really understand this work, because you just want me to teach you the skill base. You don't care about the skill base until I teach you how to use that skill base, right? Who cares about percentages until we talking about how you're going to buy your car? If I ain't talking to you about how you want to buy that car and house in the future, who cares about your percentages? So the application is what we really got to really pay attention to. Deeper learning is very important in this, and we've got to really capitalize on getting more deeper learning. Not just surface level, because surface level doesn't solve any problems. Page 10, numbers 2 through 5. It says led by individuals most qualified to provide the intervention. One more time. Where we gonna get those teachers from? Where's the financer for that? Funding, money. We need that, please. Number 13, an improvement plan. Oh my God, talk about the excessive paperwork there. You are essentially telling us that we have to give an IEP for every single student that we have. That's what this bill really goes down to. It's really like an IEP, and anybody who's actually been in an actual classroom, not far removed from the classroom, but actually on the ground, boots on the ground, you know that you do not want, first of all, when you have an IEP teacher, those IEP teachers have a hard enough time getting IEPs for the 5 or 10 students or whatever their caseload is. So now you talking about doing an IEP for every single student, all the little interventions and assessments and more assessments and more assessments, where all the research says that these standardized tests do not have no validity. They really don't show you what the kids know. They might show you some of the things that they don't know, but they really don't show you what the kids know. So we also have the diagnostic assessment that has to be approved on page 13. And again, it's another test. And I'm just telling you, from one teacher to folks who care about education, or you wouldn't be on this committee, that if this bill goes the way it is, you're going to have a lot more teachers leaving this classroom. You're going to have you have a severe teacher shortage because this puts a lot of work on us. Y'all breaking our backs and y'all haven't given us a raise in years. You haven't given us a raise in years, but you expect so much to do of us. Like, it's like me expecting you all to do so much and y'all not being able to vote to give yourself a raise. Yo, this money needs to be taken care of. We're teachers. We're human beings. We need to be taken care of. We need to be treated like the professionals that we are. We need to be at the table making these decisions. We need higher pay. We need more support and funding for any of these things that you're going to put to this, put on our plate, because we are stressed out to the max. We're bleeding out of every single pores you can think of, and understand that we are losing educators at a sub-high rate. This is not going to help that process. It's going to extend that, and it's going to hurt our profession. But at the same time, like I said to Representative Timoney, I know his intention was good, and I definitely think that we should be at the table working with him to fix some of this language, because we want to see math. As me being a math teacher, high school teacher of the year, I don't feel supported in this legislative session, and I think that the voices of the boots on the ground folks should be respected. Thank you for listening. I really appreciate what you all do.
Well, we appreciate your all's input. That's the reason that this bill today was for discussion only. I appreciate Chair Tipton bringing this forth. I do look forward to tweaking some of the things in and out, and because I do see a lot of bright spots like most of you. Before we do adjourn, I do have to welcome one of my guests. I've got Jessica back here, Jessica Niehoff. She is my intern this year. I was a little late getting here, so I didn't get a chance to do that before, but I want to do that. And I'm sorry, I have one other, Representative Riley. Sorry, buddy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll make this real quick. Since this is Miss McGowan Day, I'll complete the trifecta and also say she was also my teacher. And I liked Algebra 2, and I love Miss McGowan, except for the only thing I don't like about her is that she looks younger than Representative Jackson and I do. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Once again, thank you guys. Sorry I held you over. That was my fault on that part, but we'll go ahead and adjourn.